Hi, Mary Burns, and this is class 4 of my class on the Monas Hieroglyphica of John Dee. I have some good news for you, I think, at least if you were concerned that this class on the letter to the printer, Willem Silvius, would be as long as the class on the letter to King Maximilian. No, this is kind of a break. What we will do is have only one video for the 4th class, this one. You notice it's shorter than the others. We'll go through his letter. Again, I'm going to give you the whole text of the letter since it is sometimes not translated, and some of the translations like Jostens I'm thinking of are hard to find. And then at the end of this, I'll also tell you where you can get copies of this work in the original Latin if you want to, and we'll look at the same pages in the 1564 and the 1591 edition just to see if some people have said that there is any significance to how many lines there are on a page. Okay, so let's get started. One of the first things we might want to ask ourselves is, who is this guy, Willem Silvius? He isn't just a guy, but he's a very great typographer, actually, but until this century, there was very little work done on him. His name is spelled in a variety of ways, like another William, who's much more famous, William Shakespeare. So you find in records of the time, Silvius is Guglielmo, Guillaume, William, Willem, Silvio, Silvius, spelled 2 different ways. I will put in that underneath this video references to some of the scholarship done this century on him. That has become available through the wonderful effort of Lode van der Braden, who spent 13 years looking through archives for documents related to this guy, including his buying and selling type, having type. If you think just to print this, you would need type in Greek, in Hebrew, and a full range of type in Latin, along with being able to print the figures later on. So one man, in effect, spent years of his life just going through old, literally musty archives, finding this information. More on that below. If you want to explore the interest of John Dee in cryptography, you might also want to know that's an interest that he and Silvius shared. Now, once we get through all of the theorems, and that will be several weeks from now, I'm going to have a whole class on Dee and cryptography. But if you're interested before then, you might want to read Mertens' essay on the connection between these 2 men, because that's one of the things that he looks at. Remember, Dee was staying with Silvius when he wrote the Monas, and let's see, they both may have been a member of the family of love. If you haven't heard of the family of love, that's something you can Google, but it is let's say, a humanist society of educated persons, and beyond that, what they did is a fascinating study in speculation. John Dee is the most plausible English member, though in the book on the family of love, Hamilton says, well, you can speculate about it. That's all you can really do. I like to speculate, so for me, that's not a problem. Let's go ahead to the letter. You see, my good friend William, how dearly I hold the precious and one-of-a-kind virtues of the most illustrious King Maximilian. Pause. You may be saying, oh my goodness, do we? We've just had a couple hours of his letter where he goes on about Maximilian's virtues. I'm assuming in this class that you have done the previous classes. So when I get to say this word, rare, I've already explained the multiple meanings of that in Latin, right? So to whom I impart this rare and most excellent secret letterbox, that is the Monas Hieroglyphica, from my innermost heart, with the intention that, thanks to your diligence and fidelity, a greater number throughout this terrestrial orb may enjoy it for the honor of the king, on account of his uncommon and royal virtues, and also that others would by example grasp it themselves from him who knows how to most wisely attend to the government of his kingships, and yet also is able to accumulate the added knowledge of the stupendous mysteries of philosophers and wise men. There are 2 additional favors, therefore, that I'm asking of you. will have a slide on each of these two favors. Now, in the 1564 edition, this letter to the printer was important enough that it was printed, and the same when this is reprinted in Frankfurt in 1591. That's why I'm translating it, and those who have bothered translating it, it was part of the original printing and of both of the printings in Latin. So here's his first favor, John Dee's first favor requested of the printer. 1, that you would imitate as much as you were able my diligence in where to place the variety of letters, points, lines, diagrams, schemata, numbers, and other things, so that the format of the body, which I have by God's will born well formed from all parts, pause. Okay. After all of the things we've talked about in the letters, I'm sure you understand why this is, don't you? If we're going to look at sacred languages as the languages that give birth to creation, and we're going to merge that with a geometric cosmogenesis from the Timaeus, and then we're going to merge that into Plato's conception of the good from the Republic, and we're going to look at this Kabbalistically, like where every single thing is very important. Okay, also, the way he's talking about the format of the body, that's corpus, and we talked previously about all the things corpus could mean, the way Dee is using it. He's also here just appealing to classical rhetoric. Any English professors out there, if you took composition theory, you probably remember in grad school having to study some comments in classical rhetoric about how good writing needs to be formed by the body, balanced in head nor foot, so that it's not too heavy this way on this arm or that leg. Okay, that's the kind of classical rhetorical trope he's talking about. God's will, we talked about. We talked about this with his term Boarchidamus and De Nutu, and how he's fascinated by the gematria of that, writes down the gematria given by Panteo and Ars Metallica into his annotations in the Boarchidumia, so that you have De 18, and also a constant pun on D, 72, the significance of 72 with the Shemham Pharesh, with processional astronomy, most obviously, but also with other things. That was in class 3, and I said he was going to do it again here. There he's doing it. So that he may not bring forth through typographic negligence. You can imagine that Dee was very hard on printers. And when they made a little mistake, he would get very upset. Like, look at the little mistake here I made. That should be in gold. It's in white. I don't think that changes my meaning in any way. If someone did this with the hieroglyphic monad, Dee would say, yes, it is changing the meaning. So he complained with his other book of aphorisms. They're like theorems, the Monas Hieroglyphica. When the second edition came out, he complained that the 1558 edition, limped because the printer was so careless. Okay, we'll go on. You may not bring forth through typographic negligence light that may pass away mutilated or deformed. That would be not only unworthy of so great a king, but truly unworthy of the study of philosophy and the labor with which philosophers, upon examining its greatest and innermost depths, will frequently want to invest in it. Yet it seems to me that I have well guarded against that misfortune by choosing you as typographical parent to the newborn work, who can bring it forth and produce it with well composited shining parts in every way. So if you think of the end of Dee's letter to Maximilian, he's talking about giving birth to the work and Maximilian's virtues kind of magnetically pulling it out of him. He's flattering the printer in a lesser way, but you can see the comparison. Now, here is the second favor that he is requesting of Printer Silvius. He says, second, I would wish you to perform a task that is not a light matter, that forsooth you may not on any account put these little books into the hands of common people. Okay, whew. Dee has kind of an issue with common people. What he means, if we put it most generously, is uneducated people, or people, people whose education makes it so that they do not have the time or ability or education to understand this. But Listen to what he says about what may happen to them if they read it. He says, "It is not as if I begrudge them, but I suspect that bad things may arise, inasmuch as the wretches may not be able to extricate themselves from the labyrinth." You know, I have to say that while translating this, there were times I thought I was one of these wretches. I'm like, my God, what are you doing here, Dr. D? They would instead torment their inner constitutions in all kinds of ways. They'll neglect their everyday affairs. And also because they might advise others to advance on this same road that is impassable to them. What is this road? This is that Pythagorean Y again. They're going to go up the road of the philosopher, but it's just they cannot pass. Or as impostors, specters of men. Remember all his talk about shadows and shade. They may certainly lie, most wickedly pretending that they have explored it, or finally they will boldly deny the existence of such mighty works of God, or utter most rabid accusations against my sincerity, despairing in the end, as at the beginning, they had approached these mysteries with unthinking temerity. The Gaul, they thought they could understand it, but they couldn't, and so they just said they did. Yet if I know you well after all of these years, you will be cautious with regards to such an important task, either for the sake of our friendship or in the interest of utility for the Christian Republic, or at least on account of the heroic virtues of the most wise Maximilian that have nothing in common with the destiny of men of the vulgar sort, so that I may not seem to have sought your trust in vain. You certainly will be cautious, and thanks to you, all of the other most honest booksellers will be also. May you be well. And he signs off. That is the end of his letter to Silvius, just imploring Silvius to do a good job printing this. So let's take a quick look at his typography and also that of the 1591 Frankfurt edition, which is easier to find digital copies of the original of that online. When I was translating, I found it much easier to read. If you want a printed copy of the original 1564 edition, it's very hard to get and very hard to read. You can also find a printed version of it in Jostens' 1964 translation, which is available from Ambix. But thanks to James Egan, who I think funded this himself, I don't know, but he has, I'll put a link to this. He's made a facsimile copy of the Latin edition online. And while I have said his Latin, by his own account, is not that great, so his translation of the letter has numerous errors, boy, the man has invested a huge amount of time. And I feel personally, it's like it's a great service to humanity. And going through and comparing what he did, yes, I actually did compare it. Almost, but not quite word to word. I was comparing this Latin edition with the Frankfurt edition, with Jostens' facsimile edition of 1564, with the very bad copy I had of the actual 1564. And he's done this. This is a superb facsimile. It's available here and you can just download it if you want to see what this looked like in Latin. You will see, though, things I've talked about, like, oh, the I instead of a 1 in the margin, his caps, small caps. There are other things I haven't talked about, like capitalization that does not follow any grammatical rules. It's not Latin capitalization. It's not even German capitalizing all nouns. So when he's capitalizing words, they're important. Sometimes he'll have caps, small caps. Sometimes he'll put space between caps and so forth. Okay. One of the things that some scholars, and this person is actually an art critic scholar, not a Latin scholar, but David Oveson, who is the pen name of the late Fred Gettings, who is an art history scholar, he said in one of his books that one of the things that was significant is how many letters per line. And one of the things that is notable is the words that carry over, printer's mark, so you know you're on the next page, tend to be significant words. So here there are 27 lines, 3 times 7, you may find that significant. And the word that is carrying over on the next page here is Mercury. So Mercury, is pretty significant, right? What is Mercury? We had a whole little side video on that. Here's what this looks like. Now this second page here is the first page of what you just saw. If you need to go back, just slide the video back and look at it. This is in the Frankfurt edition. If Dee was worried that the Frankfurt edition in 1591 that they were suddenly going to mess things up, actually it's certainly easier to read because the words are larger on the page, and now you have 22 lines a page. 22, is that significant? That is, of course, unless there is some kind of graphic in there. So here is the Arbor Raritatis we saw, the rare tree, the Pythagorean Y that I've talked about multiple times. And on this page, if you count the lines, you'll get 10 lines. So the typographer setting up the Frankfurt edition was also carrying very closely. And between the Frankfurt edition and the Antwerp edition, I only found one error. This one is on the Internet Archive. You can just download a high resolution digital of the original. So that link is also below if you're interested. And hey, that is class number 4. You're done already. We're going to start in probably in a week or so. I will start posting classes on the theorems. First, I'll talk about the theorems generally, then we'll jump into the first 10. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.